Hello my dear YouTuber friends, and I do hope you're all keeping well. Welcome to this new video, Back to Basics with Microsoft Flight Sim Part 34. I'm in the Cessna 182 RG and I'm performing a vertical navigation using an approach plate to Heathrow Airport. This is indeed possible with the 182 RG. There's a couple of provisions, let's call them, with this. It doesn't operate quite the same way as your typical VNAV profile, but it does work to some extent, and it's quite a handy tool to have in your arsenal for the 182 RG. Well listen, let's not dilly-dally, let's get on with this video. Okay, so I'm in the Cessna 182 RG at Southend Airport, similar to our last videos in the Back to Basics series, so runway 23. And what we're going to do, jump in the aircraft. You will need the working title GNS 430/530 mod, which is free on both Xbox and PC. Let me just show you a picture on screen. Just type in the Microsoft Flight Sim Marketplace working, just put in working, and working title GNS 430/530 should come up if you don't have it installed. Let me just take that picture off screen. So install that, because the VNAV doesn't work on the default 530 that you get with the Cessna 182 RG, or indeed any other aircraft that include the 530. You will need that working title mod. So with that installed, just click on your Direct to, and thankfully the working title includes a keyboard entry mode for the Direct to. So we can click on that keyboard icon here, and we can just type in on our physical keyboard EGLL for Heathrow Airport. Click on that icon again, it's just here next to the flashing cursor, to turn keyboard entry off. Click your enter button and enter again to activate. Now it can be a little bit laggy and buggy, I've noticed this mod. I'm not sure if it's just me, but I've noticed it can be a little bit laggy. On the range button here, you can mouse up and mouse down. So, I'm mousing up, mousing down to zoom out, just to show you the course we've set. So Southend to Heathrow Airport. Now with that set, we could set up a procedure. So click on your procedure buttons and select approach, click enter down here. And for this, we want to choose, like we did with similar videos, the ILS 27 left approach. So use your bigger knob on the GPS here, scroll up on it to get down to ILS 27 left, click enter. And when it comes to transitions, a little bit different to other Garmin systems, but it behaves the same way. So transitions, we want to use the big transition again, so use your bigger knob here, just scroll up on it to get to big, and we'll click enter. Big's on the way on our flight route, that's why we're choosing it, and click enter to activate. And it'll come up again, it's for monitoring only. Activate approach, don't worry about that writing, just click enter. And then it'll come up with your flight plan. Now basically you can right click on this small knob here, and then use your bigger knobs to scroll through your flight plan. You can see it's similar to our previous videos. We first approach big, and then we'll continue down to basically FF27L before we reach runway 27 left. So it's the same kind of thing. Click on your flight plan again to get rid of that, and if we zoom out, zoom out on this map. It's difficult to see now. Once we get nearer, you'll see that transition is very similar to what we had, and it's on the way with our route to our previous videos. Now at this point, we want to click on the VNAV page. Now I'm going to tell you, VNAV here behaves very differently to the other Garmin systems. So the Garmin G1000 or 3000. This is very different in fact. You've got a target altitude. What this is your target altitude you want to be at when you reach a specific point on your flight plan. Now for this, I want to get down to our last fixed approach. Let me just bring up a plate, an approach plate for big, basically, for a Heathrow 27 left, ILS 27 left approach. As you can see there, the big you want to be at 7,000. At the last fix of the approach, you want to be at 2,500. It's very similar to what we did before. Let's get that off screen. So on our target altitude, I'm going to right click on this small knob and it will start the flashing cursor. Use your mouse to scroll up or down to bring up the field within that, to bring up the cursor, flashing cursor within that field, chosen field. So it's on naught. We want to use the bigger knob here, scroll up on it to get to our first number, and we're going to use that smaller knob to change that to a 2. Use the bigger knob to scroll to the next number, and use the smaller knob to change the next number to a 5. So basically I'm going to set our target altitude for 2,500 feet. This will be, I'm going to change this in a moment, but this will be our last fix on that approach plate. Click your enter button here to enter that value. That's important. If you don't do that, that value won't enter. And then use your bigger knob to scroll down to the next field. Target position. I'm going to scroll up on that smaller knob to get into this field so I can get the first number flashing within this field. Use the bigger knob, keep up chaps, use the bigger knob to scroll to the next number. And I'm going to say at 1 nautical mile, before I reach, when I change this, before I reach our final fix on our approach plate, I want to be 1 nautical mile before it, I want to be at 2,500 feet. So I'm going to change this figure here to 1. I have to scroll down on that smaller knob. There we go, 1. Enter. Before. So I'm going to use the bigger knob to get to this field here. And I'm going to use the smaller knob and it'll bring up various options, various fixes on our flight plan, which I showed you before. Remember, our final fix, basically final fix, FF here, before ILS 27 left is this one here, FF27L. So use the smaller knob to get to that. Then once again, enter. Whenever you change these fields, press enter to actually make it active. So there we go. We can right click on that smaller knob to stop that flashing, and that's it. Okay, so let me get back to my default view. So I hope you followed that. It's a little bit different. So instead, now let me just talk about this in a moment. That may have confused people. I could change this value here to the big. So that's our first approach fix on our approach fix that we're flying into for ILS 27 left. I could change that to big and say I want to be at 7,000 and then keep changing it. I don't see the point in that. Why not get down to our target altitude to pick up the glide slope on our final fix, which I've done here, and it behaves the same way, although a little bit different, as I'll be showing you in this flight. Did I just change that? Never mind. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to press my B key to make sure that my altimeter is correct. That's correct. And I'm going to change our assigned autopilot altitude, which will be here. I'm going to do this on my multi-panel. I can use this knob here. Oh, in fact, I'll use the knob. It's probably easier to get there quicker with it. To 8,000 feet. Right. Click on the VNAV page to get back to our flight plan, which is there. So simply, as always, throttle up and take off. So there's a few people flying here at Southend, which is good. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take off and then climb. In fact, I'm going to put this back onto our VNAV page. Come on. Because you're going to see some figures come into play here once we gain enough altitude. Ooh, he just got over me. There you go. So there you go. Take off. Gears up. And I'm just going to click my autopilot on my multi-panel and my nav. And I'll set a vertical navigation. Well, it's set at 1,000 feet per minute. That's fine. So what I'll do, chaps, I'll keep climbing up and bring you back in a moment when we get near to our 8,000 feet altitude. So there you go, we're getting towards our 8,000 feet assigned altitude. I've got my mixture pulled out, by the way, about 50% at this altitude. So you're going to have to do that. Just keep an eye on your EGT gauge there. I'll pull it out a little bit more. It's dropping a little bit. There we go. But we're nearly at our altitude. You can see a couple of things come up here. You've got vertical speed required. If we started to descend towards that waypoint now, this is the vertical speed, just over 200 feet per minute required to reach that waypoint from this point if we started to descend now. It's actually come up begin descent in, well, it's going to go down quick now because we're leveling out. Just be aware of that. Just keep an eye on my EGT gauge. That's fine. It's about at the biting point there, so that's fine. So it will soon come up here, status, begin descent. You may get a message now and again, and you click on the message button there. First message was set course, which I've set to 39. That's under autopilot and nav mode. So you get messages, especially when it says begin descent. So do keep an eye. The vertical speed profile, which I didn't mention before, that's the what I've said to it. I want to descend at 400 feet per minute. Let me know when to start descending at 400 feet per minute to reach that waypoint at the target time and speed. I'm just going to set my physical autopilot, altitude autopilot now to 2,500 feet, which will be our, basically our waypoint, our last waypoint, just before we reach 27 left, which will be here, our target altitude. So be sure to do that, set your assigned altitude to 2,500. It won't start descending until you tell it. Begin to descend to target. I'm going to click on my vertical speed button and set my vertical speed down to descend at 400 feet per minute. You can see there, vertical speed required, it's almost 400 feet per minute. Keep an eye on this. Click on the message, see messages flashing there. There you go. Approaching VNAV profile, that's fine, we've approached it. So basically, it doesn't do it automatically. This is the sort of caveat. Once again, I've used that overused word in YouTube, but it really is in this case. It's one of the caveats with this Garmin system. You have to start descending when it says begin descent. Keep an eye on your vertical speed required. It's around 400 feet, so I've got my vertical speed going down. Can I show you this? At 400 feet per minute, as you can see, descent. I'm doing it with my multi-panel, but you can do it via these buttons down here as well. That starts to climb. I'm going to increase my bits, climbing a little bit. If that increases to about 450 feet vertical speed required, I'm going to start descending at 500 feet per minute, just to catch up with it. Click on our flight plan and zoom in. Oh, let's zoom out, zoom in. You can see now that's the familiar approach, big approach into 27 left. You can start to see it more clearly. Once we get nearer, I'll zoom in a little bit more and you can see it's the same approach. So we're ignoring the 7,000 feet here. It's all manual. We're basically asking the autopilot under our VNAV profile to reach that target altitude using our vertical speed profile. You can see this is increasing a little bit. what I'm going to do, with the magic of YouTube, I'm going to fast forward this bit for you so you don't have to sit through the whole approach. So here we go, I'll just bring you back, because we're now on our approach leg, basically. So our approach plate, per se, towards Heathrow. We're on the big approach plates towards 27 left, ILS 27 left. Just take a look at my vertical speed required. It's going up slowly, keeping an eye on my EGT gauge as well. Speed, I'll start to slow down towards gear down speed once we get a bit closer. There we go, it's sticking around that 400 mark, isn't it? Again, we'll just fast forward this bit for you. Okay, so let's bring you back now. Let's double check everything here. So vertical speed requires it's under 450, it's going towards that 400 mark again. So we're on the correct vertical speed profile at 400 feet per minute descent. That's what I've got it set to. Though it looks like it's descending a little bit quicker there, the vertical speed. Just because it's twisting and turning along our approach here. But it still looks pretty much okay. I'm just going to slow my aircraft down again. Watch what happens to that vertical speed required. You see this becomes less as well as we slow down. Same with lead, less vertical speed, but it's still around that 400 mark. I'm going to keep it there. There we go, pretty much on the 400 mark. What we do need to do here, we need to set up our ILS well, actually no, we don't need to set up our ILS frequency. It's all set up. I was about to say we need to, we don't. It did that for us automatically with this working title module. So our frequency's all set up. Just going to see my course select. That's not set up. I believe it's about 271. And what that does, this sets up these lines for us perfectly for an approach with the ILS, including the course deviation line. For 27 left, I think it's about 271, but that will do 271, 272, it's around that mark, so I've got that set up as well. It's the only other thing you have to set up. So this course select, just to keep these lines, when we do come on that approach, you'll see these lines will line up, so the arrow will be pointing upwards, and the course deviation line will be either left or right. So we're just going to continue now. Now it's gone a bit less, isn't it? Let me just bring my throttle down again. And, oh, EGT gauge, dear me. Okay, not to worry, I'm just pushing in my mixture. Kind of lost that, but as we're coming down below 4,000 feet now, not to worry about that. Saying 300 feet per minute is required now, so I'm going to change my vertical speeds on my multi-panel to 300 feet per minute descent. Not going to change this. This is the profile was set up originally. That's what we asked it to when it said to us. So don't get confused by that. That's the profile you're set up. Then it says begin descent. It's calculating how long it would take to get down to this altitude with that profile. I've just changed it now because our vertical speed required has lessened. So just keep that in mind. There you go, and this will be our last fix for our runway. So, let's scroll in on that, shall we? By the time we reach here, 1 mile before it, here in fact, 1 mile before it, we should be down at 2,500 feet, which is looking like we're going to get there, doesn't it? It's got a bit less now, vertical speed required, so I'm just keeping an eye on that. Jump outside, you can see London City ahead of us there. This is live weather. Very sunny, very hot and humid over the UK at the moment. So what you're seeing here, it's a bit misty as well in certain parts. Not so much where I am on the south coast, but London looks a little bit misty, but it would be very hot and humid there. I wouldn't like to be in London at the moment. Humidity would take the temperature well over the 30s. There you go, vertical speed required. It's going up and down a little bit, but it's around the 300 mark. That's what I've got my vertical speed set at the moment, to descend at 300 feet per minute. May increase that if need be, if that keeps climbing up. No, it's going up and down a little bit because our needle's deviating as we're going along this jagged course. Onto our final fix. We're looking like we'll get down to our 2,500 feet, no problem. Before now, message, what's it saying? Approaching the target altitude. So it's approaching it, 2,500 feet. How are we doing? Yeah, looking like it's done it, hasn't it? So there you go, we got down to our fix at the altitude we wanted, near enough. What I'm going to do now is actually click, it's actually clicked over to VLOC. I can click my approach button. Where's the approach here? It's got to be down here, isn't it? Approach mode. Approach mode is activated. The glide slope indicators here on the 182 RG will start to come down slowly, and it should lock onto them again. Just going to keep an eye on my speed now. Put my mixture back up full. Just bring down my gear now, it's not going to matter. We're at a lowish speed. Heathrow's just ahead there, as you can see. Keep bringing down that speed to get into stage 1 flaps. We're at our altitude. It will lock on to glide slope. Well, it's locked on to glide slope as well, so there you go. So the rest of it is very similar to something like the G1000 or G3000. It will switch over to VLOC, even input your ILS frequency. It's just a course select here. So look up the bearing to the runway for your course select to make sure this is all correct and behaving. Stage 1 flaps as we descend. It's all locked on, glide slope and approach. As you can see, it's descending for us. Keep bringing back that throttle as we descend. And we can go back to our default view. So as you can see, it works quite nicely. Let's just decrease that throttle again. I do have the first stage of flaps in there. So 10 degrees of flaps in. So I want to be within that flap speed ideally. It's descending quite vigorously. I've almost got my throttle nulled here. But as we know that flaps, I can go to 20 degrees of flaps. That's not a problem. And that will slow us down. And just watch my speed now. I don't want to stall as I've nearly got it. It's a powerful little beast, the 182, isn't it? Got to keep an eye here. You don't overspeed or underspeed. That will do nicely. Yeah, so I'm just basically controlling speed at the moment. That's all I need to do. The autopilot's taking control. So essentially, chaps, what it did there, just to recap, I set the target altitude and my target position, what I wanted to be at 1 mile before. Well, it's disappeared now, but FF2020, our last fix on our approach, 1 mile before it, I wanted to be at that target altitude. The vertical speed profile, I missed out on that in the beginning, but I explained it later. You set what vertical speed you want to descend at, and then it will calculate when you need to start descending to reach it. I think it's quite a nice setup on the 182. Very different to the G1000. But great all the same, in my opinion. It's a very much earlier Garmin system, this, but it does a very similar thing as you just saw. Now, I wonder if that's the inner bills Heathrow causing those lag spikes. It can do that every now and again, but I do like it. That's why I kept it installed, and it does settle down. There you go, just watching my speed. In fact, I can keep my speed low. Let's put ourselves into our final stage of flaps. So full flaps, gear down of course, and we'll come over the runway, take it off autopilot and land it ourselves. So there you go, do give this a try on different ILS approaches. Maybe practice your ILS approaches. I've got my Back to Basics series linked down below with the G1000 either in the Grand Caravan or ideally probably the Cessna 172. Practice the approaches first to make sure they work, then come in here and practice them. And you can set your altitude. I mean, you can even try setting this in steps. You can always alter this on the fly. I just didn't see any use. Put it to your final fix and it'll bring you down under a VNAV profile. You do have to have a manual hands-on with that to start descending, but under your VNAV profile it'll bring you down under the correct profile, get you down at your target altitude, at your target waypoints correctly. Autopilot off, bring back my throttle here, and we can just try and float this landing a little bit. 127, not too bad. And we can just pull off, of course. Okay. Bit of a verge here to our right, so we'll go right. And that's absolutely fine. Let's not block other players. I'm in a live server, so that'll do fine and dandy just there. So do let me know your thoughts, chaps. Do give this a try in the Cessna 182. I know it's quite a popular aircraft. Let me know your thoughts on the video. Give it a like if you've enjoyed it. Subscribe for more, many more of these types of videos on their way. And I'll be seeing you soon.